Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. So today when I was kind of contemplating what kind of a project I wanted to do, I was thinking that I haven't done anything very Art Deco for a while. I also wanted to do something with a faceted stone. So I combined those two, did a little bit of brainstorming, and so we'll see how this ring comes out. I picked out Rhodolite Garnet, and it's a real pretty purplish red. It's a 5.5 by 7.5 emerald cut. And I think it'll be pretty in this design, so we'll give it a shot and see how it turns out. Before we start, though, I needed to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. I could not do this without their support. They provide me not only with financial support, they've created this really nice community over there where we can all tap into each other's knowledge and share ideas and show our work off to each other. It's a really nice place, and it not only helps me financially, it helps me become a better silversmith. So thank you for that. You guys are awesome, and you have two new members. You have Fonskov, I hope I pronounced that right, and Powell Ka1. So thank you both for signing up. I appreciate your support. My other group are my YouTube subscribers, and we have 25,400, just past that. And that's amazing. Thank you for that. I can't believe that I have so many followers now. That blows me away. I really, really love the comments that you guys leave. It's really nice to hear your advice and to hear things like I've helped you out of a slump or whatever. That kind of thing really makes my day. So thanks for that. I do really also appreciate your financial help. The Buy Me a Coffees, the super thanks, the ebooks, the merch, all of that stuff contributes to keeping my channel solvent, and I appreciate that. So, all right, well, let's get started on this Art Deco-ish, Art Deco-esque, Art Deco-y, Art Deco-ish ring. So this is one of my design idea sketchbooks. This one's almost full. Uh, and it has, this particular model has a gauge to inches to millimeters conversion chart on it. Some of the other ones have different charts and or information about silversmithing, like melting temperatures and things. What I really like about them is the dot matrix in the background, because it helps me to draw better pictures, because that's not my primary skill. So it's also a great way, I found over doing this YouTube channel, I've kept a record of pretty much everything I've made, and so it's really nice to be able to go back and check those things out and see how I did them, because I can't always remember exactly how I accomplished something. So, all right, well, this is kind of what I got going for today. I wanted to do something Art Deco, and I felt like doing a ring. So this is actually going to look narrower than this. I've kind of got it splayed out because when we get to that stage, we're going to bend it into part of the ring shape. And these are going to be a little bit thicker square wire than I'm using up here. What I did in advance is I took some 14 gauge square wire and I flattened it out in the rolling mill a little bit. That'll give us a slightly narrower profile for these individual bars, like this. And I think some of them, like these ones on the ends here, I might do this way, so it just contrasts a little bit. But basically we're going to have to make one big rectangle and then this kind of trapezoid or parallelogram. And then we'll probably piece everything else in there. But it shouldn't be too hard. Sometimes doing this little piecework and getting it perfectly symmetrical is a challenge, and that's usually my biggest issue with doing stuff like this. So for the big rectangle, I was thinking, I was going to do it in one piece, where you file a notch partway through, bend it, file a notch partway through, but it's hard to get it exact when you do that. So I am going to go ahead and make it out of 4 separate pieces and use my miter vise jig, which allows you to get really nice 45-degree angles on things. And then I think these other things we're just going to have to hand file to an acceptable angle, just eyeball it. But I don't think that'll be too hard. We can mark things with a line when we line them up on the piece as we're building it. The band here is going to be 12 gauge square. I'm going to flatten it a little so it flares at the ends after I solder the two pieces together, just to give it a little dimension. And then, let me show you the garnet. Where is the garnet? Here's the garnet. It's a kind of pretty garnet. It's got a few flaws in it, but it's not bad overall. It's got that kind of tinge of purple to the red, which makes it a rhodolite garnet. And you know, shape-wise, it's cut well. There's a few scratches on the surface, so but I can live with that. It's still really sparkly and pretty. All right, so to make the bezel on this, we're going to use 26 gauge 3/16 inch tall fine bezel strip. However, I will likely file this down shorter in the long run. It's big enough for most stones, but not. It saves me having to have a whole bunch of different sizes. I use this for most everything anymore. Then I just cut it to the right length or width or height or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so let's make a bezel for this, and then on the inside we're going to use 18 gauge round wire to build 2 little rings to make a step to build it up. So it has room for the pavilion to stick down into the opening. And that's, if you want to see that process in detail, I have a pretty good video about that I did a while back, making a step bezel for a faceted stone. So check that out. That's a useful video, I think. To start with, though, let's file this. Oh, actually, let me tell you the dimensions in millimeters, since I have a lot of overseas viewers. 18 gauge round wire, which we're using for the step, is 1 millimeter. The 14 gauge square wire is 1.6 millimeters. 12 gauge is 2 millimeters, and like I said, we're going to flatten part of it. Let's go ahead and make that bezel. Oh, here's my setup here if you want to see the torch and the solder types that I generally use, flux and everything. Okay, so when you're doing something with corners like this, you never want to end the bezel on the corner. I usually tell people that because it seems to be a human desire to do that, because whenever I teach people how to do this, they try to do it like that. So you get a better result if you put the end in the middle of one of the longer sides. That way all of the corners will look the same as each other, and you won't have a hardened one corner because of the solder and stuff. So it's just problematic when you do it in the corner, so try not to do that. You notice emerald cuts like this are actually octagons, just with uneven sides, because the corners are usually angled inwards too, so there's actually 8 little sides. But when we're bending, you know, something, it's hard to get it a perfect sharp angle, and so that's okay. I'll sometimes actually curve right in and be perfect for an emerald cut for bezels. You do want to get it relatively, you know, tight up in there. That looks pretty good. It's hard for me to see sometimes when it's done on the paper like this anymore. My eyes are not what they used to be, alas. And shellac. It's generally worth taking the extra time to get a pretty, you know, a bezel that doesn't have a lot of excess on it. When you're doing a bezel for a faceted stone. We'll make a little mark here. I usually go a little bit beyond where they meet, just so I have a little bit of room to file, but with something that I want to be this tight, I didn't give myself much extra. We don't want a sloppy bezel. What would people say? They say, did you get that at one of those costume jewelry stores? Well, I hope you're all enjoying the suddenly high prices of silver, as I am. Who doesn't love paying 10 times as much as you originally did when you started? I was being sarcastic, wasn't I? I'll try to keep the sarcasm and cynicism to a minimum. You probably are coming here to avoid things like that in the world. I did a crummy job on the first go around there. I'm always a little leery of checking the sizes of bezels on stones like garnets and various types of quartz, because you can spall off a corner pretty easily if you're not careful when you're pushing it over it. So let's create a little step now for it out of some 18 gauge round wire. Set the stone off to the side again. It's usually going to take at least 2 layers, and this is I know this is not the only way to do this. I could even take some of this square wire and create a step that way by making a little piece that fits inside there. That would work as well. I'm just used to doing it with the 18 gauge round wire and doing multiple layers, because you can keep adding layers to get it to the height you want it to be. So let me find some 18 gauge round. Same way with the bezel on this. I probably wouldn't end the wire in the corner. Unless you're some sort of weirdo. But surely none of my subscribers would be weirdos. Alright, so I usually cut these off just a skosh long. That way I can file it down to where it fits just perfectly. When we do put these in and solder them in, you want to make sure they're nice and flat, so you don't have a kind of a wavy surface for your stone to sit on. That would create some issues for you probably. Alright, let's do one more. Whichever one fits better we'll put on the bottom, because that'll be the part you can see. The other one, that'll be another little secret between us, right? The other one isn't perfect. When you're bending wire, if you need to move a bend, like I didn't quite get that in the right spot, if I offset my pliers like that a little bit in the direction I want the bend to move, and just pinch, it'll move that bend slightly. It's a magic trick. Close. I think that one's a little bit tighter than the other one. I like the way it looks better, so let's put the other one on top. Okay, let's solder that. I have several pieces of solder right there, which probably should be enough. Usually just set the piece right on top of these bits of solder. That way when the thing reaches soldering temperature, it'll just flow up into it. One thing to keep in mind though is that you're using fine silver for the outside and sterling silver for the wire. Sterling silver melts at a slightly lower temperature, so if you keep the heat on too long, the bezel will stay whole, but the wire will start to melt and spread out on the inside, generally making it unusable. We have our bezel. Now we need to start making the frame for it, I think would be the next logical step. And I like one of the reasons I like drawing stuff out like this is I can use the drawing itself as a template if I kind of draw it to the scale I want it to be. So let's cut this end off here. File it flat. Okay, if you haven't seen a miter vise jig, these are little devices that allow you to do either, you can slide the wire in. Like if I wanted a perfect 90-degree angle, if I wasn't confident in my filing, you stick it out the other side there, and you can just screw this down and file it flat like that. But mine also has a 45-degree angle like this, so if I slide it in here, it's perfect for making frames of things. I can just stick it out like that, tighten it down. Now they make a better model than this that also has a 60-30 degree. Unfortunately, when I bought this, I cheaped out. I should have stuck it out for the better one, but hindsight. It still works very good and it's useful for a lot of situations. It's funny because I've been doing this for, oh, I don't know, 30 years now. And I never found out about those until like last year. No, 2 years ago maybe? 3 years ago? So, somewhere in there. Pretty recently though. I'm curious if anybody knows how long they've been around, because that'd be funny if they've been around the entire time and nobody ever bothered to tell me about them. Okay, so I'm going to hold it up here, and then I'm going to find a T-pin. These are handy for a lot of things. And I'm going to mark where it goes to the outside there, and kind of angle a line inward, so I file it. It needs to come in this way. So I'm going to cut it off a little bit outside of that. You want to make sure you got your angle facing in the right direction. Sometimes there's little filing burrs left over there you need to kind of pick off or scrape off. Let's see how close we got on our... That looks pretty good, so we'll use this one to measure the other one. Actually, let's do the second one this way, and then I'll do the other two off camera to save time, since I'm just going to do the same thing. Here's a trick for getting it pretty exact. If you put a little black marker, it doesn't have to be black, I guess. It's easier to see your mark. So I'll know to go back that way. I tell you, my fingernails never look normal anymore. Alright, so we got that one. We got this one. Now we just need one more of each, so I'll be right back. So I think it's useful sometimes to have one of these kind of things around, a little square. So get it at least pretty close to 90 degrees. That looks pretty good. So let's do two at a time, I think. Or at least two for the first one. I do something called pick soldering, which is probably the most valuable skill metalsmithing wise I ever learned. And what it involves is, first of all, locating your soldering pick, which shouldn't be as hard as it is for me. And then what you do is you pick up a little bit of solder, theoretically. Okay. After you flux your piece, you just put it right in there when it gets to that soldering temperature. And it jumps in there. So it's a very useful technique. So if you're interested, I have a good video about it. So watch that, practice it. I also have another video that I did not too long ago that is all about practicing that, so you can see that one there if you want. It takes just a little bit of practice, and then you can kind of get a feel for it. And then the world is your oyster. Well, I don't know if it grants you that much freedom, but it does help. Okay, so I think let's find the middle of each side. I'm going to see if I can file through and do this in two pieces so I can make a sharp bend here and here, or actually right there and there probably would be better. And have those two ends meet like this, in two V's kind of instead. I think I might get a better result if I do that. So let's try that. Something like this, you want it to be relatively symmetrical. When you're making something wonky, you want to be making it deliberately wonky, or not deliberately wonky, one or the other, but not accidentally wonky. Alright. I think we need a couple of pieces there. So twice that length, that's about 18 millimeters. Alright. A lot of times I use my saw to start that just a little bit, so I'll be right back. So I don't need to bend these super sharply, so I don't want to make too deep of a notch or too wide of a split. So just a little bit of a narrow kind of angle. Let's see how that does. That was actually a pretty good guess. That's pretty close. Let's try it and see if we can duplicate that. That's pretty close. I'm going to solder those areas where we just filed it a little bit so it becomes a permanent bend. So here's my thought. And one of the reasons I marked the ends is because I was thinking we could maybe do this. I think about there should be a little bit too long still, but I want to be able to file it down. I also want to be able to use this one to cut this one. And we'll be able to see a little better how close we are. So you can see we need to take a little bit down to get that to fit in there. That almost goes all the way to the end too. That wasn't really what I intended. Well, we'll work with it and see how it goes. I always cut it. It's going to be a little shorter once I file it anyway, probably. So. I think that's close enough. I'm going to file the ends a little bit flat too so they flush up against there nicely. It's about 2 millimeters from either end to the side, so I think I'm going to go with that. That's pretty close. It looks relatively straight to me until I get it soldered in, then it won't look straight anymore. That's just how the universe works. Come back here. We got a little space between there. It actually might be nice if I could solder the stone just to the point of both of these triangles. That would be awesome. So maybe we can do that. So let me try and make these. That would allow easier bending of this thing downwards into a shape that'll be more conducive to fitting on a finger. If that makes any sense. Did a little bit better that time. So I think I'm going to solder the two V's onto the end here. Hopefully I can get them pretty symmetrical, but that'll make it easier to position everything and figure out where to cut it off, which I'll use my saw for. So yeah, let's see if we can get those soldered on pretty symmetrically. Let's see what we can do here. too bad. Make a mark on the inside there. I'm going to saw those off. Hopefully they'll fit in there real nice. Let's go to the sawing area. So I'm just going to cut all these off. I marked them. All right, let's go see where we're at. Now we're going to have to put these in here. Try and get those pretty straight. We'll probably have to do those one at a time, I think. That's pretty good. Solder that one in there. I've got a couple for the ends here. I'm going to solder those in. I notch these sideways so they're sitting a little bit lower. Some of them have a little bit wider profile. I went ahead and soldered these other four in there. Those were a little challenging to do. One of them actually sucked into the corner there, so I had to cut it out with a saw and remake it. And I didn't get them perfectly straight, like this one's not as straight as I would like, but I think if I mess with it too much more, it's gonna do something bad. And we'll try and avoid that. So I did measure out for about a size 9, and that's from here to right there. And I need to deduct the length of this from the length of that we need to make a size 9, since this is going to become part of the length of the band. We'll cut a couple of pieces of this that long or so. This is that 12 gauge or 2 millimeter square wire. That's pretty close. About right there. Let's flip it around. Right about there. Just going to extend those across the other way. Then let's bend them outwards from each other just a skosh. Okay. I'm just going to solder it together in the middle there. I think, believe it or not, that it's hammer time. I'm just going to flare these out a little bit. Now I'm going to anneal that a little bit, and then I'm going to shape it a little better and probably clean it up with a Dremel, and then we'll solder into this thing. So you can see I've got this kind of evened out with the Dremel, and I filed the ends flat. And so I'm wanting to solder that kind of like that. So let's do that next. There's a lot of mass in this band. Definitely going to have to spend some time heating that too. Just a piece of I want to make sure to get both pieces up to the 1450 degrees that it takes to get hard silver solder to flow. So you get a strong solder joint. One of the reasons I wanted it just to attach to the point here is so it's easier to bend this part a little bit to make it more into a curve. Let's see if we can get that to curve just a little bit. If it was attached on the sides too, it would really start to distort the bezel pretty quickly. And if that were the case, I would have soldered the bezel in after I had this round, which was kind of my original plan, but plans change. Right now it's going to look like not very ring shaped, but we will change that in a little bit. Alright, so I think for this one I'm going to push this into my magnesium block. Things are unlikely to move too much. Let's try and solder that in there. See if we can do it without dropping anything. Like that. I think that should be pretty. Well, let's get that cleaned up and pickled, and we'll see how it looks when we're done. Okay, so I got things mostly cleaned up. I got this bezel filed down to where I think I want it to be. Something that I do when I have corners, and you sometimes run into the problem where there's too much metal in the corners because you're trying to push it inwards too far. So I'm going to thin out just a tiny bit on each corner. Carefully. And that just reduces the volume of metal you're trying to force into that small area. And I do this a little differently than a lot of people. I use my chain nose pliers. I use the flat side here as a bezel pusher. So we'll start by kind of doing that on the corners. Make sure everything's staying level. And go in on the sides kind of gently. And then finally I'll use the rounded outer part of these chain nose pliers to kind of rub that top, smooth it out, and burnish it down. Okay, so that's kind of what I was shooting for. I like it. I think it's Art Deco to me. All right. Well, let me know if you think it's cool or if you think it's not cool. Last thing I'll do is I'll use a blue fine silicone polishing wheel to kind of clean up the top of the bezel, and then I'll get some better pictures. Okay, well that was the Art Deco ring with a Rhodolite Garnet. I hope you enjoyed that. And hopefully you learned something or got an idea for a project for yourself or whatever. But either way, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button. That really helps to get my channel promoted. And I'd also love it if you go check out my main channel page on YouTube. I have 560 some videos now. I've been doing 3 per week for almost 4 years. And so there's quite a bit of content over there. Lots of projects, some skills at all different levels. So it's worth checking out and watching a few videos. And I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. There's no cost for that. There's no cost for that, and it really helps me out. So I appreciate it in advance if you do that. The other thing is, in the video description down below, there's not only information about this video, there's some links that are important as well. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about the various tiers of that. The lowest tier just being the one where you get rid of the YouTube ads, which is kind of nice. But there's other tiers as well that include other privileges like live streams, and I do almost a weekly Patreon exclusive tutorial over there. So it's a nice place, and I think there's a lot of value to be had by joining up. So love to have you over there too. There's my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks I showed you at the beginning. Those are super handy and a great way to keep track of your projects. Also, a link to my ebooks. We're working on the newest one, which is the tutorial guide for 2025, which should be out shortly after the first of the year. Right now there's 2024s and 2023s. Each one has links to all of the videos in its particular year. And on each video's page it has additional information about the video, like it has a picture of the concept drawing, it has a picture of the final piece, it has a list of materials you need to make the project, a difficulty rating, and some notes that I made about each video indicating whether I thought it was a success or a failure, or would I do it differently now that I've thought about it a little bit. Are there tools I could have used that would have made it easier? You know, all sorts of stuff like that. And so it's got a lot of information there for a pretty reasonable price. So it also is a great way to have a whole bunch of projects right at your fingertips, and a super nice way to support my channel. So get yourself both of the current ones, and when the third one comes out, get yourself one of those too. All right, well, thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.